Welcome back to the latest You Are My Boro. Myself, Tom Shaw and Scott Wilson, reflecting on another Boro win at Watford on Saturday. 3-2 success at Vicarage Road. A couple of goals for Riley McGree after he'd taken pride of place on his page lead in the Echo in the Northern Echo on Saturday. It's great when a plan comes together like
Isn't
that.
Isn't it just?
It was almost as though we'd prepared and planned it. So a couple of goals for McRee, a goal for Josh Coburn. We'll talk about both of those. We'll talk about all the positives to come from the last week for Middlesbrough. But there is one problem, and we're going to start there. Left back, Lewis O'Brien goes off injured on Saturday. Scott, you've been over to see Michael Carrick today at Rockcliffe. So we'll start with the injuries and the situation there. What's the latest on O'Brien?
Yeah, it's becoming the cursed left back spot, isn't it? Really, So obviously O'Brien went off in the first half of the game at Watford. Straight away after the game, Michael Carrick kind of said, the fears are that it kind of could be a bad one, in as many words. And the line today was still waiting scan results. They should be here in the next 24 hours or so. But in Carrick's words, it's not looking positive, which I think is probably at this stage as close as you're going to get from him saying it looks like a pretty serious one. Clearly out of tomorrow's game against Cardiff, almost certainly out of the derby at the weekend, and the fear would be that it actually stretches a fair way beyond the international break. But we'll have to see with that. But yeah, certainly for the next two games, I think Boro are going to have to do without him, and maybe for a little bit longer than that too.
And before we talk about who's going to come in and who's going to replace him, it's a sickener for O'Brien, because I was over at Rockcliffe when he came in and spoke to the press. And I thought he came across really, really well, really personable. When I was at Rockcliffe for the presser last week, he was just knocking about in reception, having a bit of chat with a few of the lads who were working there. And again, comes across as a really good bloke. And he talked, didn't he, at length and openly when he signed about the fact that, that Forest move didn't go to plan, and he's come here desperate to prove a point in his words. So even if it is weeks, to get this setback, having just broken into the team and really established himself, although be it not in his first choice position, it's a sickener for him, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were speaking to Michael Carrick about him at the back end of last week, and the fact that obviously he'd slotted in there at left back, and Carrick couldn't have been more effusive in terms of just saying, what a good lad he is, in terms of, he's come here. We brought him here on loan. He'll be desperate to prove himself in centre midfield. We've told him, look, we're going to have to shoe on you in at left back. And Carrick was basically saying he's been absolutely as good as gold in terms of that, And obviously the performances were really good too. So yeah, a blow for Boro, but a blow for O'Brien himself. And like I say, you just hope that it's not a really bad one. Let's hope that we're going to see him sooner rather than later. As I say, it's a bit of a watch this space with that one, but yeah, the early signs clearly aren't good.
And Boro find themselves now in a weird position where they're not short of left backs, but for one reason or another, they might well start with a centre half who's played at right back and has had to fill in at left back, and who's only 19-year-old there tomorrow, because Hayden Coulson started the season but has been out the picture. Lukas Engel clearly suffered a disappointing and difficult start after signing. He's more likely to play Vandenberg there tomorrow, isn't he, than bring either of those two in? I mean, you asked him about it today.
Yeah, I think he's nailed on to play. Unless Bangura is ready to go, and all the suggestions are he's not there yet. He's not far off, I don't think, but he's not there yet. Then yeah, I think it will be Vandenberg. I mean, again, Michael Carrick was at pains to say today, look, this isn't the end for Engel, and it's not the end for Coulson. Coulson played in the under-21s on Friday night, which probably gives you an indication of where he's at. I mean, again, Carrick was saying, look, he just needed some game time. And yeah, I think there is an element of that. But the fact that he was playing for the under-21s on Friday night rather than being the part of the squad challenging for a place at Watford kind of tells you exactly where he's at in things at the minute. Engel, I think, is a little bit different. I think Engel will get another chance. I don't think the door's closed there. And I think that come the end of the season, there will have been opportunities for him to get back in the first team in some way, shape or form, and at least, challenge to try and show that he's the player that Boro thought they were signing back in the summer. But at the moment, Carrick clearly doesn't think that he's in a position where he can pitch him in to start a championship game at home to Cardiff. So no, I think it will be Vandenberg. I think it'll be Smith at right back. I think it'll be, well, Lenihan's the other one. So he missed the game at the weekend through illness. But again, you know, not a definitive from Carrick, but reading between the lines, I think Boro expect him to be available for tomorrow night. And if he is, then I think he'll start ahead of McNair. So I suspect the back four will be Smith, Fry, Lenihan, Vandenberg.
On Engel, it's an interesting one, isn't it? And I agree with you. You know, clearly they're not going to write a signing off after 3-4 games, whatever it is. But it feels like the next game for him has to be the right one, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because what you don't want to do is push him back in. And, you know, I don't know whether his confidence has been hit at all by the difficult start. But what you don't want to do is, having taken him out the team for what, 4, 5, 6 games, or however many games it is, put him back in and him have another difficult afternoon. It feels like it has to be the ideal scenario. You've got to take a bit of a punt on him, haven't you?
You have. The ideal scenario is over the course of the next 2 months, Boro get themselves into a situation in a couple of games where they're 3-0 up with 15 minutes left, pretty much cruising, and you can bring in, you know, Vandenberg if he's playing at left back, Bangura if he's back or whatever off, and throw Engel on for 15, 20 minutes here and there just to gradually get him back into it. But you're right, at some stage, he's going to have to sink or swim as a starter. And yeah, he's had this rocky spell. It feels like if he was then to come back in and show no signs of being any more comfortable, then alarm bells probably start ringing then, don't they? But like I say, I envisage a scenario where he'll be drip-fed back in as a sub over the next couple of months, and then maybe get to a scenario where Carrick thinks, okay, we're ready to have another go at starting here. I mean, maybe it feels a long way off, but actually, you know, FA Cup 3rd round, that's probably the next real game with obviously, you know, because there's the Carabao Cup clearly, but as we said in the last pod, that suddenly now feels like a massive opportunity for Boro. So whereas the early rounds of the Carabao Cup and maybe experiment and throw 2 or 3 players in to get them game time, surely that's not going to be the case at Exeter. That's a game Boro are going to go absolutely full pelt to win. So probably the next time when you can, you know, unless you're forced to because of injuries or whatever, the next time when you can kind of really experiment is probably the 3rd round of the FA Cup.
Yeah. I know we say we're not going to, and Michael Carrick was saying only a couple of weeks ago, you can't compare with last season, and I completely get that. But you see Ryan Giles sat on the bench for Luton now, and you just wonder whether he's. I don't know whether I said that this week or whether I've just thought it out loud to myself for the last.
No, I think we did touch on that.
You do wonder. We've spent on the back of what 3 wins, 4 games unbeaten. We've spent the first 8 minutes talking about a problem position, an area of concern, and yet clearly there's plenty to be positive about for Boro all at once. Josh Coburn being one of them. We don't need to go over the background again in Plymouth and stuff, but when a player gets a chance, they need to take it. And hellfire, he's done that, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. He has. You know, in terms of the last week, obviously, you know, the 3 wins. I think McGree's kind of return to top form is a big positive. I think Hackney's level of performance again is a big positive. Isaiah Jones coming back to where he was, big positive. But the biggest has to be Coburn because, you know, as we've been saying to death really since the start of the summer, that attacking position is the big worry in this Boro team. Where the goals are going to come from is the big worry in the Boro squad. If you've got a striker who is putting his hand up saying, I want to be your man, I want to be your number 9, I want to lead the line, give me chances and I'll score, that's a massive bonus for Boro. And listen, it's only a week, it's only a couple of matches, but it does look like Coburn is championship ready. It looks like that, you know, he's perfectly comfortable at this level. And it looks like he's the kind of leader of the line that Boro have been crying out for. Now, unsurprisingly, we spoke to Carrick on Coburn today. He was asked about him after Watford as well. And I think it's interesting. So Vandenberg, who is at a fairly similar stage of his development, if you like, really, Carrick kind of, at the moment, cannot be more positive and wanting to big up Vandenberg. You know, he's described him as a great personality, really exciting, doing all these jobs in the defence at the moment. He said today, eventually he will be a centre-half. That'll be his position. And it's really exciting to think where he could get to with that. Coburn, I think because he knows he's a local lad, because he knows he's the striker, he's really at pains to go the other way and say, look, brilliant, could be anything, fantastic, but, very early, don't want to put too much pressure on his shoulders. He'll develop with us, all of this kind of stuff, which is fine. But I think we're going to get quite quickly to a situation if Coburn, continues developing he has been, where, no, he's Boro's striker. He is the man that is going to be charged with getting the goals for Boro over the remainder of the season. And, Carrick's right. That is a lot of pressure to place upon a young lad's shoulders. He's still only 20. But if he shows that he's capable of handling that, then that's a massive thing for Boro, isn't it?
And I think clearly a big confidence boost before the game on Saturday is the fact that Latte Lather started at Bradford in midweek, scored.
Yeah.
And yet Carrick, completely understandably and unsurprisingly on the back of that Southampton win, has stuck with him up front. It's a clear vote of confidence. And how many examples have we seen over the years? Marcus Rashford's kind of a high profile one, but how many examples have we seen over the years of young players who've taken an opportunity and the breakthrough? I mean, Stuart Downing is a prime example where he gets his chance because whoever got injured in the middle, Zenden was moved inside, Downing goes on the left and obviously absolutely rips it up and makes himself undroppable. Rashford at Man United, when he got those opportunities, and from nowhere took his chance. And it's the same with Coburn, isn't it? In that we know that the plan was to send him out, but then obviously things change because Boro don't get whoever. And then he's taking his chance. And you might look back in January if he's got 8, 9, 10 goals and think, hellfire. Imagine if he'd gone out. It is just one of those classic sliding doors football moments, isn't it? I mean, you're right to say that young players just need that chance, and sometimes the stars align and things happen and they get the chance, and that's absolutely right. I don't think it's necessarily just young players. I mean, so, I've done a piece for tomorrow kind of talking around the Coburn situation and kind of feeding in some of what Carrick was saying. And I just had a little look back, and this stage last season, we were still a month away from Chuba Akpom playing his first game as a number 10. And a month away, pretty much, from Michael Carrick coming into Middlesbrough. And yet, almost at the flick of a switch, we're at a situation where Akpom is a revelation at number 10. He's the Championship's top scorer, and he's gone and joined Ajax. Now, I'm not for 1 minute saying that Coburn is, comparable to Akpom or the careers are going to... No, nothing like that. What I am saying is that football seasons go off in totally... unforeseen directions because of circumstance, because one decision is forced on someone and something clicks, or because something goes wrong, something else has to happen, etc., etc. It feels a bit like that with Coburn, doesn't it? That, yes, had things gone differently in a number of different ways in the summer, he probably wouldn't have been here. It wasn't plan A. But playing Akpom as a number 10 wasn't plan A until Carrick came in and thought, well, we need to do something here. I need to get this side functioning. Let's try this. This is Coburn's big chance. And like you say, at the moment, he's taking it with both hands. Now, yes, the caveat is it's only really been a couple of weeks. Let's see if come Christmas and he's playing every game, is he proven as effective? Has that initial adrenaline rush, calmed down and Championship defenders are working him out, etc., etc. Yeah, let's see. It still is very early. And so, I think Carrick's right in some ways to be saying, look, let's just keep a bit of a lid on this. But a homegrown centre forward who's potentially going to be the man firing the goals in for Boro this year. I mean, it doesn't get much more exciting than that from everything, a fan point of view, a journalist point of view, a club point of view, everything. It's kind of the dream, isn't it? So, people are going to get excited about it quite quickly if he carries on the way that he has been in the last couple of weeks. And as a fan, I think because of the way he plays, it's impossible not to take to him, isn't it? Because he's honest. He's clearly he's a very, very, very good footballer, but he's also got that, you know, he puts himself about, he's a nuisance, he's honest.
Almost the
always
throwback,
leaving
that
nothing
in
there.
quotes, old-fashioned number
Yeah,
nine.
yeah.
And, you know, yeah, football changes, everything, but fans love that. Absolutely love that. You know, a homegrown lad leading the line, running his heart out, knocking defenders around when the ball's put into the box, banging it in from 20 yards at the bottom corner. What's not to love?
And I remember talking to him last year when he was on loan at Bristol Rovers, and he was talking then. He was saying, obviously, he was living down there, but he was coming back, and he was saying his parents don't really follow football that much.
Right.
But he says he quite likes that because it's kind of a release for him, really. You know,
his dad, of course, was the butcher, wasn't he? Of
Yeah.
He's the butcher of Neil Warnock sausages press conference fame.
Yes, yeah. So he says, it's quite like, you know, clearly he's the local lad, but he's from Beedale, isn't he? So I guess this isn't like, you know, this isn't like Stewie where he's you know, in Middlesbrough Town Centre there or thereabouts and being surrounded by Boro fans all day, every day. He's kind of slightly removed from that, isn't he? And clearly, like I say, there's the family, while he says, you know, the show, clearly, obviously, real interest and go and watch, that there is that kind of when they go home, it's not all football. You're not constantly talking about football. Riley McGree, a couple of goals on the back of the goal against Southampton. I mean, it's kind of saying nothing that we didn't already know here, but he's very important, isn't he, to a Boro team that's playing well. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's still a little bit of a mystery why he was kind of, you know, so in and out in those very early weeks of the season. And again, Carrick was kind of asked about that today and just kind of said, look, you know, it's not, when I leave players out, it's not necessarily because they're not performing. It's not necessarily because they're not doing it. It's just that, you know, you have to make decisions. I can only play 11. That's all fine. But
that's fine if you're winning.
I think if you said to most Boro fans, name me your best Boro 11 at the minute, even, you know, at any point this season, I'd be really surprised if there was many that didn't have Riley McGree in it. Because for me, him and Hackney are the two players, certainly in the midfield or attack, that you know are absolutely copper-bottomed top six in the Championship players. Yeah. You know, at any stage, at any club, they would be, for me, top six in the Championship players. And so surely you want them in your team. So listen, whatever's happened, it's clearly not been a major issue. There's clearly not been, you know, a fallout or anything like that. Whatever reason, if he didn't think, if Carrick didn't think he was quite as sharp or whatever, that's obviously been addressed now. He's back in the team. He's playing pretty much as well as he did at any stage last season. He will surely stay in the team, you know, between now and the end of the season, you know, as long as he stays injury-free, etc., etc. I think he's that important to Boro. I really do, yeah.
And it's an interesting one here because tomorrow, on the back of a relatively long trip on Saturday, then you've got the game tomorrow night. And obviously you've got another matter of a rather big game on Saturday dinner time. So you would think maybe last year Carrick might have tinkered with one or two things, but you suspect with this momentum they've built up over the last 7, 8, 9 days, he's only going to make the changes that are forced upon him, surely.
That's exactly right. I think it's one of those where if you're on a 12-game winning run and everything in the garden's rosy and everybody's playing with a massive spring in their step and everything, then yeah, you probably that, you know, it's easier to tinker that little bit more, isn't it? I think at the moment, the fact that Boro have been scratching around and suddenly have now hit on this little bit of momentum, I think Carrick will be massively loath to change anything really for Cardiff. So clearly, you know, as we've said, there'll be a defensive change forced on him. McNair will play centre half if Lenihan isn't available, but I'd be really surprised if the midfield 5 and Coburn up front change. I just don't see it.
And Cardiff are a funny one because I had Cardiff when that managerial appointment in the summer, and I know they made a couple of eye-catching signings, but I had Cardiff as one of the teams where you looked at them and thought they're going to have a struggle this season. They've obviously started really well. They're in the top 6. That said, it's the home form that's got them there on the whole. I think if they won one away from home, I think of the 4 games, that was at Sunderland. I wasn't there, but by all accounts, it was a smash and grab, classic case of Sunderland dominating, but just not being able to find a way through, and Cardiff score with 87th minute was it set piece, first ever on Tiger. But clearly the look, you only have to look at results. They're probably stronger than they have been for a couple of years. Cardiff.
Yeah, absolutely.
By no means a pushover tomorrow, is it?
No, and I think what's interesting is you pigeonhole teams, don't you? And so I still pigeonhole Cardiff as a kind of Mick McCarthy era side who were full of big lads, lumping or Warnock, yeah, and are a threat of set pieces. Now, I think they still do carry a threat of set pieces, and the defenders have scored a bit in recently. But as Carrick was saying today, they're a passing team now. They play football. They've got speedy attackers who are dangerous on the break, but they've also got midfielders who are quite comfortable in possession, more than happy to knock it around and build and pass and probe. So, I think certainly from what I would say is the kind of stereotype of Cardiff, I think that's gone now. So, that said, yeah, I think a top 6 position is still a massive surprise, given how, what you would have thought of them at the start of the season, the upheaval that's been there. They have made signings, but they've certainly not been big money signings in comparison to other teams that are up at the top end of the Championship. But it's a tricky game, this for Boro, because, like you say, Cardiff will be coming full of confidence. They've won 4 on the bounce in the league, which whoever you are, as cliche time again, but not many teams do that in the Championship. So the fact they've been able to do that says an awful lot. Like you said, they came up and won at the Stadium of Light, which, given the way Sunderland have been playing recently, is not an easy thing to do. So Boro are going to have to be on it tomorrow. Yeah, they are. This will be an interesting examination of them, I think, tomorrow. And
it feels, obviously, you'd love to win on Tuesday night and you'd love to win on Saturday. You can get 4 points from these 2 games, then you go into the break with it. And we talked about this only a couple of weeks ago, didn't we? For all, there was clearly a lot to be concerned about then. We did say things can very quickly change, and they have done. And if you can continue that to the break now, then again, it just gives you a chance to take stock. Whereas last time, the break felt like it came at a really good time just to give Boro a chance to reconsider. And then you come back to I guess pause for thought after that tough start. Blackburn defeat, first half at Sheffield Wednesday, which was dreadful. But fair play to them. I know managers will tell you this, but it does say a lot about the character of the team for the way they've bounced back, especially from that first half against Sheffield Wednesday, because that was deeply worrying, that performance. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, listen, Saturday's a big game because it's a derby. Is it a derby? Isn't it a derby? It's
whatever.
The last game.
Sunderland, it's the last game. I think tomorrow is more important, though, because I think at home, tomorrow's the one that kind of keeps that momentum going, or feels like a bubble's being burst pretty quickly after it's been blown up, if you know what I mean. I think if Boro go and win tomorrow, then that's 2 home wins on the bounce. That genuinely is a kind of feel-good factor back at the Riverside. And even if then they go and lose at Sunderland, clearly absolutely not ideal because it's Sunderland, but taking a step back, Sunderland at the moment are playing ever so well, and it will be no disgrace for Boro to go and lose there. I think if they don't win tomorrow, then A, the momentum dissipates quite a lot, and B, suddenly an awful lot of pressure is piled back on that Sunderland game, because you then, if suddenly you're going into the international break on the back of 2 defeats or a poor home draw and a defeat at Sunderland, then I think all the questions that we were asking, 3 weeks, a month ago, are probably right back on the agenda for the international break. So it feels like tomorrow night will go a long way towards determining kind of where Boro are at in this next international break. More so, I think, probably than the Sunderland game, for all that the Sunderland game will have a lot around it, and understandably the fans will be desperate to win that. I think tomorrow's the one you probably need to win to really keep things going.
And what do you reckon?
We haven't been getting an awful lot right recently, have we?
No.
I think the way that they're playing and the fact that they must have taken a pretty decent amount of confidence out of the weekend, the fact that Coburn has got the bit between his teeth, I think it'll be tight. I think either 2-1 Boro or 1-1. But I think 2-1 Boro is a reasonable enough guess. For all they've been on this good run, I don't think Cardiff are a side that are going to score an awful lot of goals and create a hatful of chances. I don't have them pegged as that. I think they'll be probably hard to break down. So I think it'll be quite tight. But I'd fancy 2-1 Boro. You?
Yeah, I think that. I'd have probably gone 2-1 as well. I'd fancy Boro to mention. I just think they'll have taken so much belief, not just from winning games, but the way they've won games. The Sheffield Wednesday game that I mentioned, as poor as they were in the first half, they weren't brilliant in the second half, but there was clearly an improvement and they got something from the game. And I think they'll come away from that thinking, kicking themselves really for not winning it. Yeah. Then to go a goal down against Southampton when confidence you would have thought at that stage would have been fragile, but the way they fought back there, then to go 2-0 up against Watford, let that slip, but to then go on and win the game, I think all of those will have helped to build belief. And I suddenly think this game now, whereas this felt like pressure, I think this is a game suddenly that you're bouncing to, and it's one of them where you can't wait to get another one on the back of the Bradford Cup win as well, and the boost of the Exeter draw. Really, I know Carrick will be stressing not to take that for granted, but it is something to look forward to for the players, as we talked about at length last week. So I just think there'll be a real feel-good factor around the squad now, and I think that momentum will see them through on Tuesday night. And I fancy them to win at 2-1, 2-0, 2-1, and then it's Sunderland, and we'll talk about that at length, no doubt, later in the week. But
I would say I think Jones is a big player at the moment, assuming he starts to do, because I think that if it is going to be Smith and Vandenberg as the fullbacks, which we're kind of expecting it will be, then there's not an awful lot of attacking thrust there, is there? Smith, because that's not really the way he plays. Vandenberg, I think, because understandably he's a centre half really who's playing at left back, but at this stage of his career, he's going to be focusing more on getting the defensive side of his game right than bombing on down that flank, which is understandable. Howson's clearly not going to be bombing on very much. So I think there's a real onus on Jones to be the creative outlet, to be the kind of dynamism in that team. And he stepped up reasonably well to that in the last couple of games. So I think he'll be a big player if the team is as we expect it to be.
Because that back four, the whole dynamic changes when you move Vandenberg to the left and bring, say, Smith in the right, because kind of the success of Smith last year was obviously Giles bombing on, Smith tucking into almost making a back three, whereas that back four of Vandenberg, Fry, Lenihan, Tommy Smith, Tony Pulis would look at that and think, oh, that's my type of back four. That. And it's just a
back four, isn't it?
A proper back four of defenders first, isn't it? Now,
which is fine. It's not necessarily a problem, but like I say, you do have to create width from somewhere, and you do have to create some energy and forward momentum from somewhere. And if you look at that team, Jones stands out like a mile as the man who's probably going to have to do that.
And we spoke to him after Sheffield Wednesday when he'd come on and made a big impact there. And he admitted that one of his challenges is, because he has made an impact, but in recent weeks, back end of last season, start of this season, we've certainly seen more signs and more flashes, haven't we, of the player we know he can be. But probably more of them had come from the bench up until the last couple of weeks. I think the challenge now, and he's showing signs of stepping up to that, is becoming a consistent starter again, isn't it? And I think the other thing on that, we're talking about fullbacks there. I know it's probably only a footnote for now, but Dyke Steel's return for the 21s on Friday night, good news. Dyke Steel, when he came in, I can't remember the game, but he came in for 1 or 2 games at the back end of last season, and then shocking misfortune really when he was sent off at Rotherham, and that allowed Smith to then come back into the team. But I thought Dyke Steel looked really good in those in those games. He'll be desperate for a run of games under Carrick, won't he? The chance to try and nail down a spot.
And you're right. I mean, if he's in the team, then again, the dynamic of the back four shifts a bit again, doesn't it? Because he does have that athleticism and agility and at least a much more of a kind of forward thrust and threat down the right. I mean, I think it's still fairly early with him. He obviously, he got the injury in pre-season. By all accounts, It was obviously in that behind closed doors game against Victoria Setubal, and by all accounts, it was a horrendous tackle. I mean, I know I'd speak to a couple of the press lads at Boro who were watching the game. It was, X-rated stuff at any time, let alone in a pre-season friendly. So it's obviously taken the best part of 3 months to get over that. Now, interestingly, Carrick said today, he is behind, as you would expect, but should only take him a few days, maybe a week or so, to get back up to where we want him. So I don't think it's inconceivable that he's maybe on the bench, if not tomorrow night, then maybe for Sunderland. And then I think he'll definitely be in amongst it straight after the international break. And that could be important because, if Boro aren't going to have a real natural attacking fullback down the left like they had last season with Giles, then maybe Dyke Steel rather than Smith just helps the balance of that back four and the balance of the team. We'll see over time, but if nothing else, it's another option, isn't it?
And just finally, what about Matt Clark on the subject of defenders and fitness? Any suggestion? I know Carrick has stressed that there's no rush, there's no urgency. What we don't want to do is risk rushing him back and one step forward, two steps back. But is there any indication of when he might be ready to be?
I think we're probably talking after the international break, and then I think he'll be potentially in amongst it for first team squad return. Pushing for a place. It's one of those, isn't it? I think if Lenihan was badly injured instead of being ill, then you look at it and thinking maybe we need Clark on the bench, and just in case, and if he can give us 20 minutes if we're desperate. That they're not at that stage at the moment. You know what I mean? McNair's there. He obviously came in at the weekend, so they don't need that. But I think I don't see a scenario. Well, I guess he could be on the bench, couldn't he? There's enough subs nowadays that you can kind of put someone on the bench never really thinking you're going to use them. But I think it's more likely after the international break than before for that.
And just one last one before we wrap up. I wasn't at Watford on Saturday, but I've seen Yousef, the Boro fan, who most, if not all, Boro fans will be aware of it, taken to social media over the weekend to say that there was very few Boro fans absolutely inexplicably racially abused him during the game. I know Yousef has had issues in the past, and I've spoke to Yousef at length in the past, but it goes without saying that our thoughts and support are clearly with Yousef. He's a brilliant bloke. His support is brilliant home and away. It's great entertainment to be able to see Yousef from the press box and see him dancing around, usually on the front row somewhere. So hopefully, clearly 99.9% of the Boro fan base is going to be with him, and he's got the support of them off the weekend. So thoughts with him, and I'd seen Boro put out a statement earlier today saying that it
was depressing to read in here, wasn't it? I mean, it's unacceptable and depressing enough if it's other fans directing it, at him or something like that. But if it is as we're led to believe that it is, and it's been from proper Boro fans as part of the away end, then that is just unacceptable, and it's pretty grim stuff, isn't it, in this day and age, to be perfectly honest. But sadly we do still see that. I mean, I was at Hillsborough on Friday night, and obviously there was the Sheffield Wednesday fans waving the Bradley Lowry stuff, which is you just wonder what goes through people's minds. It's
well, that's one of them where I was off over the weekend, but when I'd seen that on social media originally, my instinctive reaction is that can't be genuine, that can't be real. Just because you think, why on earth? Like, how on earth?
Through someone's head, exactly. It's bonkers, absolutely bonkers, and that was pretty grim when that started coming out on social media on kind of Friday night, Saturday morning. And then, like you say, the use of stuff on the back of the Boro game, every bit is depressing, really. But yes, hopefully it'll get dealt with, and obviously it goes without saying that if anyone was at the game and heard anything or knows anything, then get in touch with the club, because they do want to get to the bottom of it. As I say, I know I was at Rockcliffe today and it was discussed, not with Carrick, because it's not really fair, I don't think, to ask him about it. It's got nothing to do with him really, but just in and around the club at Rockcliffe, they are aware of it, they are looking into it, they want to do what they can with it. So if anyone's watching this and knows anything about it, then yeah, I would urge you do get in touch with the club, because they do want to sort it out if there is an issue there.
Yeah, he's a brilliant fella, Yousef. I don't know whether he watches and listens. I'd like to think he does. I like to think and hope every Boro fan watches and listens. But yeah, I think he'll know from the reaction over the last couple of days that he has the support of thousands and thousands. So I hope he keeps doing what he's doing, and I hope Boro keep doing what they're doing and get a win.
Yeah, you're at the Riverside tomorrow, isn't it?
I am. Yeah, I haven't seen my last game was Sheffield Wednesday, so I'm looking forward to seeing
the first half. Better be better than that.
I'm looking forward to seeing a Boro transformed on.
Exactly.
On Tuesday night. Yeah, I've got Boro tomorrow, Sunderland, Watford on Wednesday. It's a proper scouting job for both before I make my decision on what's going to happen on Saturday.
On Saturday, exactly.
Which we'll talk about, because we'll do another pod. We'll do another video Thursday or Friday.
Back end of the week, definitely.
On the back of the press conferences, and before the game on Saturday. As usual, if you watch on YouTube, then please remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and if you listen on podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, then please do leave a review and rate us as well on there, because that makes a big difference. Thanks as ever for watching and listening, and we'll be back later in the week to hopefully reflect on another win and look forward to that trip to Sunderland.